Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to One Mic, One Wheel, the show where we talk all things motorsport and sim racing related. I hope you guys enjoyed episode 9 with VSR Marquez, otherwise known as Odems, talking about how he finds the league racing community in general and how the community helped him through his recent bout of severe illness. We're moving back to commentators now today, but we're moving to the PC side of things, a side which I actually haven't covered on this series just yet, and would be nice for them to get a word in here. But today I have in the box with me a commentator who does work for one of the most professional and well-known companies on the iRacing side. It's RacespotTV, and I have with me today Connery Maddick, one of the commentators over there. Connery, you're very, very welcome to the show. I'm very happy to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here to talk about what's been happening in the past 2.5 years of my life, or at least in my free time when it comes to that. Thank you very much.
Not a problem at all. We'll start at the beginning then. How did your love for motorsport begin?
Well, I've basically been immersed in it since as far as I can remember. I always remembered my family just sort of gathering around watching the F1 races, and everything just exploded from there. Just got myself involved into some other series as well. But as with most people, F1 was where it all started, and it continues to be a very heavy interest.
Is there any particular moment that sticks in your memory that began that love?
Ooh, that was a really tough one because I've been around, I've been aware of the of Formula One since I was very very young, but I don't really can't really pick up any particular moment, to be honest, which is a really really strange thing to say. But I just take the races as they come, and of course, I can pick out individual races like the very famous Canadian one that went on for a billion hours, etc. But yeah, it's just been in the background in my all my life, and it's turned into what it is now.
Moving to the virtual side of things now, can you remember what the first racing game you played was?
Oh, the first racing game. Actively remembering it, I think it was the F1 Challenge series. That was the 98 to 2002 one. I can't remember the exact dates. I'm just gonna have to quickly look this one up. But I think that was the first racing game that yeah, the 99 to 02. There we go. That was the first racing game I really got myself involved in, and it's an old classic.
And how did you move into the esports side of things, both the racing and commentary wise?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the serious sort of sim racing side, I signed up to iRacing in around about 2012. Did a couple of races then, and I went on a pretty big break until I think around about 2014. I was primarily doing a lot of oval racing on the NASCAR side. There on iRacing, I find I'm much better at turning left than I am turning right, so I guess that's a natural fit for me. But you know, there was one situation. I think it was one night where there's a club series on iRacing for just for UK drivers, and it's called the UK and Ireland Monday Night Skippies, where they have the Skip Barber Formula 2000s. It's basically club racing. It's absolutely crazy stuff, side by sides, pretty much everywhere. And I used to compete in that series as well. And I was talking to one of the commentators one night, because I had this sort of background interest in maybe doing some commentary, and it was Rachel Whiteford, and she basically invited me onto the broadcast to see how I would do, and it just got crazy from there. I just hung around, and they said, "Hey, can you just do some of our regular broadcasts?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll do that."
Nice, nice, nice stuff there. Um, and what do you consider to be the difference between Racebot TV's coverage and sort of the bog standard ones like I do?
Ooh, can I even explain this without offending someone? Like that's that's probably the way I'm thinking about this. Um, well, we bring a certain sense of sort of professionality to what we do. I mean, if you look at some of the World Championship broadcasts, especially the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze series, we've got the VRS GT World Championship as well for our racing, and then we've got the upcoming Porsche Esports Super Cup, which is what I'll be working on. We're sort of bringing sim racing broadcasting more towards what the big esports broadcasters are doing right now with the sort of TV style coverage. Just like not just like the visual grammar that that the TV style coverage has. For example, having the analyst desks in the studio and et cetera, et cetera. We haven't really gotten to that point yet, but we just mainly want to make the broadcasts sound like you can just be hearing it on the radio or on TV. That's sort of the route that we're going down. Of course, we have that esports influence as well, so it's not all sort of really strict, broadcast grammar that we're going with. You've got the esports memes coming in and all that, so we're a little bit more relaxed, but with ours, with Racespot TV, it's basically our motto is just awesome broadcasting, and that's just what we aim to do. No gimmicks.
And what do you find to be the most difficult thing about doing commentary?
The most difficult thing, I think it has to be endurance racing, to be honest. Because you get these 6 hour, 12 hour, 24 hour races where you're doing very, very long commentary stints indeed, and there are times during those races, of course, where there's not much on-track action going on, and that's really tough for me personally because I'm more of a play-by-play commentator. I absolutely love those battles. That's when I can get into a rhythm and into a flow. But when it comes to endurance races where you have very long periods of nothing happening, or at least on track. You can talk about the strategy in those situations, of course. That's personally where my weaknesses lie as a commentator, but always working on trying to improve that over the course of the time I do this.
And on the flip side of that, what's your favorite thing about doing commentary?
My favorite thing it's the crazy finishes. To be honest, we had one in the 12 hours of Sebring racing event that was done very recently, where it was a battle for the GTE race lead, and it was contact coming up through the final sector, where one driver got spun around and the other team ended up taking the race win. That was absolutely insane. I mean, there was some controversy about how that one was done in terms of the contact, and when there's contact, everyone's going to be siding with one person or the other. But it's just sort of those moments, those pivotal moments, those emotional moments where I really relish in my commentary, and I try to drive that emotion home.
And is there any series that you haven't had a chance to commentate but you'd love to give a go?
Ooh, I'd love to give some Rallycross a go, actually,
I agree with
because
you
I
on
think
that.
that I think that fits in with my strengths because it's absolutely bonkers. It's just action going on absolutely everywhere, and I would absolutely love to get a piece of that.
Now, you also raced too. You did a bit of racing in the past. What was the experience like when you were selected for the UK and Ireland team for the iRacing World Cup in 2015?
Ooh, wow, you've done your research.
I have. I have. No messing about.
Not messing about at all, but yeah, that was a really sort of good moment for me because in during that time period, at least the UK and Ireland club on iRacing were really sort of tight knit. We were all in the Mumble server as it was then. I think it's the TeamSpeak now. They changed software, but we were all tight knit, especially the oval side because you don't have that many oval races in the UK. NASCAR is not really all that popular over here, and to be able to represent in terms of the UK and Ireland in that sort of event, that was crazy. We still haven't won against the Finns yet, even since then. They've been absolutely on a roll. Part of it is that they can get their really quick alien drivers to turn up, and we have a little bit more trouble in terms of that. But it's a great event. Unfortunately, it's not supported by iRacing anymore. It's sort of a run as a third party thing. But it was a fantastic event to do, and it was one of the few times I've gotten myself onto a official iRacing broadcast as a driver rather than the commentator. So I'll take it.
So, what sort of opportunities have you been given as a result of your commentary work?
Yeah, many opportunities. I had the opportunity to go to ADAC Sim Racing Expo in Germany at the Nürburgring to commentate some of the sim racing there. I'll get to do so again this year. When that event rolls around, end of last year, I got to do the Porsche Sim Racing Summit, which you're only just starting to see the results of. Given that was more of a test event for Porsche to see whether they wanted to get into the high level production of esports or not, and so I think that was pretty successful. But to have those sorts of insane experiences. Going on a plane and flying somewhere just to do esports commentary is just it just boggles the mind. I just had to pinch myself and just in the airport just going, is this actually happening? Am I just going to get on the plane to go and do commentary? That's crazy.
And what was it like? Was it a little bit strange seeing seeing the drivers you've commentated on before in real life?
Yeah, it's really, that is sometimes one of the problems with online broadcasting because you don't actually see the drivers, the players actually there. So it's really tough to make a emotional connection to them as a viewer. And one of the moments that sticks in my mind when you could see those drivers was at the ADAC Sim Racing Expo when Lauren Henreich, one of the Pure Racing Team drivers, crashed out in his semi-final race where he was doing very, very well and looking to qualify. And he, binned it at the top of the mountain at Bathurst, and you could just see him walking off the stage, and he just looked completely dejected. And I was just like, those are the sorts of emotions that we, if we can incorporate that into a broadcast, for example, that would be absolutely fantastic. But yeah, seeing the drivers in person is sort of a crazy sort of crossover from the online world into the real world. I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, you're that guy from Racesport doing the commentary," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know who you are." Not as a sort of egotistical thing, but it's like I legitimately can't put names to faces. So it's kind of weird when that happens.
Now you don't just do the racing side. You've also moved into CS:GO. So when did you start casting CS:GO, and would you consider that to be a little bit more intense than the racing side?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the race, depends on the match as well. If we're talking about Counter Strike, with that it's action every single round almost. Rounds with on a 2-minute timer. So you get action quite often. So you don't get those sort of races or matches sometimes where it's just completely boring when nothing happens, like you do sometimes in racing, where one guy is off at the front and doing his best Lewis Hamilton impression, at least over the past couple of years, out the front doing everything. But yeah, when I've getting into Counter Strike was sort of a university thing because I started attending university in 2016, and found an esports society there. It's just a group of university students that are really into the esports side of things. And I started playing Counter Strike with those guys, and I thought, oh, this is actually pretty fun. And by extension of being in that society, I also got into the esports broadcasting side as well, with the big tournaments that go on. I think my first one was the 2017 ESL Cologne tournament for Counter Strike, where I just got hooked. Basically, those guys are absolutely insane at what they do, and I've tried my hand at it myself, and I'm having some success here, at least in the UK scene with some of the LAN events that I've commentated on. With Epic LAN, and of course the university championships as well, with the NUL, who is the National University Esports League, doing their finals. So no, that one's coming along as well. But I think if anything's going to explode into a big thing for me, at least, it would be the racing.
So overall, would you say you prefer the racing over Counter Strike?
Oh, um, I mean the racing is my first love. I guess nothing can really pass that, I suppose. But Counter Strike is it's absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love doing both of them, and I don't mind which one I get to do, as long as I'm making the calls in the commentary box. And I found that is sort of one of my passions now that I want to continue forward. But it's difficult as a esports commentator because it's one of those things that very few people get to do this as a living, and I definitely aren't earning. I'm definitely not earning enough right now to be able to do it for a living, and very few people would be able to do that. So if it becomes a thing, then that would be very much ideal. But this is a career is it's going to be a tough slog, but I want to go for it.
And this is going to be, I think, a really quick answer. But do you prefer the racing side or do you prefer the commentary side?
The commentary side. I don't really race anymore all that much, to be honest. My wheels sort of collecting dust a little bit under my desk. It goes extended periods of time before that comes back out. But yeah, the commentary is the commentary is my main focus. And let's face it, if I'm going to go pro in one thing, the commentary is the more likely thing to happen. I'm
Uh,
a terrible racer.
and finally, Connery, where do you see yourself being in a few years' time?
In a few years' time, that depends on where the sim racing scene is in a few years' time. If we are, getting to be one of the really, really big esports, if this trend that we're seeing over the last year or so continues to go the way it is, then we'll be seeing many, many more big championships happening, big LAN events as well, in front of spectators. And fingers crossed, and if all goes well with the work I've been doing, then I might just be involved in some of those. But it's that's where I want to be in the next couple of years, just being doing those sorts of massive events like you see, for example, in Counter-Strike, seeing the ESL events, the Internet Stream Masters, the Counter-Strike majors as well. Those sorts of big events translate over into sim racing. I want to get involved in that somehow.
Well, Connery, I'm afraid we're going to have to round it out there, but it's been a pleasure having you on, and I wish you all the future success with RaceSpot and the CSGO side of things, and I hope it brings more success for you.
Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure to be here.
So that has been the 10th episode of One Mic, One Wheel. Join us next time where we will be talking to another member of the sim racing community to talk about their journey through esports. Just want to take a moment to say thank you all for the incredible support you've shown the series so far. We're 10 episodes in and it's going very strong indeed. So I'm going to round it out here. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time for episode 11. Thank you and goodbye.